Lampung, from Bulgarian University Sofia, and from Macquarie University Australia, which has taken us months of intensive preparations. I extend you to all my warmest welcome by this Zoom meeting link because we are still in pandemic COVID-19 situation. Tourism, business, and sustainability is our seminar and workshop theme today. We should expect critically challenges ahead in fully realizing the spirit of the theme for more specific and detailed focus. We have arranged this series of this international seminar and workshop every year, and today is the fourth. We have at Universitas of Bandar Lampung, Indonesia, in collaboration with New Bulgarian University, Sofia, Bulgaria, and from Macquarie University, Australia. My appreciation also to members of the organizing committee and staff that have been working very hard to make this seminar and workshop held. I'd like to thank them for their dedication, time, and efforts. I wish also to thank to our patrons, individuals, and organization partners, students, especially graduate students at Universitas Bandar Lampung, and volunteers. Without their generosities and full participation, we will not be able to create a total environment to have this international conference and workshop held. Thank you all for your presence and participation, and you are very important part of this seminar and conference to be successful. Finally, by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I officially open the fourth International Seminar and Workshop 2021. Thank you very much and enjoy the seminar and workshop. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Andala R.P. Barusman, SEMAEC, for the opening speech. And now we are pleased to announce our three amazing keynote speakers for today. The first one, we have Professor Ninel Kiosefov from New Bulgarian University, Sofia, Bulgaria. And our second keynote speaker, Dr. Mei Tinglu from Macquarie University, Australia. And our third keynote speaker for today, Dr. Tina Miniawati Barusman, NDA from Universitas Bandar Lampung, Indonesia. For the next discussion will be continued by Dr. Susanto as the moderator. Dr. Susanto, the time is yours.
Ya. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Tabik pun.
Salam.
Yeah. The Honorable, our keynote speakers, distinguished guests, fellow students, and all participants, ladies and gentlemen, very warm greetings from us here at the University of Bandar Lampung in Indonesia. First of all, I would like to welcome you all to this prestigious international workshop and seminar. It is the fourth, as informed by our director of the postgraduate school, University of Bandar Lampung. It is the fourth international seminar and workshop. The seminar and workshop is hosted by the graduate school, University of Bandar Lampung, Indonesia. The theme of our seminar and workshop for today is tourism, business, and sustainability. Thank you very much for the director of the graduate school program of our university, University of Bandar Lampung, for opening this international seminar and workshop. Associate Professor Dr. Andala Ramaputra Barusman. And then in this occasion, we shall have outstanding presentation from our prominent keynote speakers in our conference, whom I believe that we shall enrich our insight and knowledge by listening their presentation and lectures. The first keynote speakers is Professor Nina Kiseva from New Bulgarian University, Sofia. Please allow me to introduce our first keynote speaker. Nina Nisheva Kiseva, PhD, is Associate Professor of Economics at New Bulgarian University. She's visiting lecturer at the University of Bologna, Alma Mater Studio Room in Italy. And then she is external scientific expert at the University of Aveiro in Portugal. And then her main areas of research are financial crisis, ethnic banking, environmental, social, and sustainability accounting, pricing of services of general interest, water, electricity, gas, heating. And she is a member of the Center for Social and Environmental Accounting Research, CSEAR. She's also scientific consultant for sustainability financial reporting of Gruppo Societe Gas Ramini. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Nina Kiseva, PhD, Associate Professor from New Bulgarian University, Sofia. Professor Nina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your invitation. I'm very pleased to you. Can I share my screen now?
Yes, please.
I think it's not possible. Oh, yes. No, it is not my slides.
I think you should close this and then open for the PPT, then
May
share
you see
again.
my slides or not? Because
It's not.
one participant sharing the moment, maybe it's not possible to share my slides in this situation.
Oh, I see.
We already see your share presentation.
May you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. If you can see, this is the problem about COVID virus. Like an external economic shock and changing the business model in tourism and the problem with sustainability. This is my issue, what is published in Alma Tourism journal from University of Bologna this year. And I want to show you our distance. I'm from Sofia, Bulgaria, a long distance to Indonesia. About the explanations and I hope discussions on this issue. This issue is based on European examples and the situation in Europe now in the struggle of the COVID. And the methodology is historical based. I hope that we have to discuss some problems like I think actual problem are West European and global problems are equal or not. May you see my presentation?
I think, Professor Nina,
Yes.
please close this browsing for the internet, and then go to the PPT. Yeah, please close the browsing, because here we see the Zoom.
Oh, yes.
Browsing for the Zoom, not for your PPT.
I think that I will share now.
Yes.
Okay.
Then for the presentation view.
Yeah,
You
we can see
may
now
see.
Yeah.
the slides, Mr. Santo.
Okay, good.
So how
Yeah.
our experience in Europe is the same like in the other part of the world? Our difference between the decisions of this crisis between West and East countries, and the problem with changing of business models like a tool for sustainability. May we receive sustainability through new business models. The content is to examine the changing business models as a result of this COVID crisis. And I told you that the part of methodology is historical methodology. Because a similar change is historical tangible after a massive external shock to the economy. We haven't to clarify the terms external shock to economy and pandemic, pandemic-like external economic shock. Here, I will present some significant historical cases and periods in which in West Europe, in the Balkans too, there are radical and tangible changes in business models as a result of external shock to the economy like pandemics. The hypothesis, my hypothesis is of the power business models. The power business models in considered based on the summary of a distant historical and recent experience in the specific business ecosystems and the algorithm of the change. As the result, I conclude that the change, including in the business models, including this in the business models in tourism sector, will most likely require the implementation of self-created beta versions based on the club theory, club economic theory, and ambidextrous business models on one hand, and business models based on the state entrepreneurship and state aid. These are two main, I think, developed in business models, and for the future, they will be developed more. And both these power business models emerging from social trends. This is the content of our discussion about epidemic and pandemic as an external economic shock in historical perspective in Europe, and radical changes in business models. What are the changes in business models and the solutions in this field? And these two main power business models in COVID economy for sustainability. In this issue are observed two great external shocks in Europe, what are called epidemics or pandemics. Maybe in the past they are called epidemics, now we call pandemics, but the area of these epidemics is so large, and we can say that in the past they are really epidemics, and they're not caused from economic sources, external shocks, like financial problems or other. These are disasters The first case, this is a pandemic from the second half of 17th century in Europe. What caused in this period plague pandemic combined with the 30 Years' War in 17th century? What caused radical changes in the economy and in political structure and in business models? This change is linked with, I think, with the destiny of Indonesia, because these radical changes, what caused from these pandemics, led to the colonization of Indonesia from United Seven provinces, now called Netherlands or Dutch. This is one great change, not only for Europe, in European business expansion, but caused very deeply the destiny of Indonesia. This is a plague pandemics combined with this war, 30 Years' War, and creation of a Westphalian system, what created the new national states in Europe, except Bulgaria. Bulgaria liberates later. And new organization of production is created in this period after the Westphalian set of peace agreements, and the role of national states is become main factor of economic development in this new borders national states. The economic domination in Europe changes too in the result of this external shock, and Amsterdam becomes the pole of European economy and begins its expansion in the East. So the business model is dramatically changes in this moment in the result of this great external shock, what influenced a large part of the world. The other changes are dramatically too. This is regular business information becomes with less transaction costs, with conditions for systematically received business information too. Change the structure in labor force. We see now the same in the COVID crisis, the changing in the structure of the labor force. But in this moment begins increasing the part of the population, and this population what working in the towns begins to live on their wages and salaries, not from the production of their lands, their own lands. And you may see the percentage of Western European what living on wages increasing from 25% in the beginning of 16th century to over 15% in the middle of 18th century to 17% in the middle of 19th century. Maybe we may expect radical changes in this direction, not the same, but similar in the result of the COVID crisis now. I use this historical methodology under the recommendation of Nassim Nicholas Taleb. You know this important scientist. He argued that we can understand the changes now only in historical perspective. So wages of skilled workers are beginning to rise sharply. Like now, the wages of workers, employers in IT technologies, for example. And a change in the property rights was made in this period. Maybe the shared economy, the shared property, the shared value. About what to speak, important people like Klaus Schwab, the leaders of International Monetary Fund and World Bank, is again the changing in the property rights. Maybe we go to the new changing in the property rights, but in other way, in other means. And new banking and credit system was developed like commercial bank, money markets. We see now too the changes in these areas. Public finance of national states, the long distance trades and enterprises linked with this long distance trades. So we see now only in this very sharp example, under the pressure of external pandemic shock, a radical, very heavy changes in business models, what was dominated to this pandemic. And they are changing now too. The other observed problem is Spanish influenza. In the beginning of 20th century in Europe and then in North America and other countries. And we have again the role of the country. What rised sharply in this moment after this Spanish influenza and First World War. Now we are happy that we have no world war or large war in the world, only local, but wars too. So the COVID pandemic broke our life, and the business in tourism is suffering, is large-scale pandemic lockdowns and measures taken from the governments. The economy in the world declined in all the world. Here is unemployment rate, total like a percent from a labor force. The source from Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And we see this very deep decline the tourism is one of the most suffering sectors in economy, and here are some data about the decline in the tourism sector. In 2020, a decline is over 75% on the international tourist level, a great loss of revenues, a great loss of firms. And this decline in tourism has a cumulative effect on the other sectors like transport, incomes, employment in these sectors, and other industries. And now the changes in business model and probability solutions. The solutions to this moment in Europe are traditional. The growing role of the state aid, subsidies, and regulation from the governments. Actions from the government for protective functions on the economy, on the public health. This is a line, begins from Westphalian system after the plague in Europe to this moment, growing role of state in the economy and in the society too. The other solution to this moment, this is through the digitalization. What is in the hands of big tech corporations, some private-owned companies, what we use their utilities now. This is the data, what is provided from International Monetary Fund, that developed countries spent over 20% of their GDP during the pandemic for support of economies and societies. And the small economy, you see that we have a great difference, only 2% from their great domestic products for the support of economy from this external shock. And on the other pole is our Alphabet, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft, tech companies. This is the other state, the nominal heir state, from a supranational informational IT companies. Such support an oligopoly over the key resources in the pandemic. The key resources, information, business information, scientific information, and all information are in their hands. Sorry. Some scientists and practitioners say that the transformation of business models in our situation will be to more inclusive business models. And more inclusive business models will providing more sustainability. For example, we have and other more radical views like this of Nicholas Gilani, that we need a new form of capitalism, the capitalism with the human face. In the past, in the crisis of socialism, because my country was participant in the socialist experiment too. So in the crisis of our model of socialism, in the Czech Republic, there was a development for socialism with human face too. Now the history repeats. We have books and thinkers, scientists, what thinks that the capitalism have to take a new human face for radical changes in the capitalistic system. Between this, the real business make some experiments to survive using and traditional and new, growing from the practice business models. For example, these models appears in the years before COVID crisis, and they try in the competition to reduce transaction environmental costs too under new regulation for green economy. And the companies from the practice created a wide range of new social, inclusive business models. So we have heritage in this field. These are 15 most popular business models existing to the crisis, like big corporation in United States, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, and the others, economy of comunione in Brazil, Italy, and other countries, peer-to-peer innovation, product services system, and the others. And about sharing economy. The penetrating models are models from sharing economy. And it is accepted in tourism too. And this is recommended from International Tourist Organization that the solution for tourism, these are new business models. And International Tourist Organization to United Nations for tourism created tourism services or so-called sharing economy. Now we will see these models. Why this is not moving? The World Bank Group too thinks that tourism will be survive with sharing economic models. About sustainable peer-to-peer accommodation. Sorry. The main example is Airbnb, but here we can see the comparison between some companies what using in the COVID crisis different business models. These are TripAdvisor, Expedia, what is absolutely online-based company. Thomas Cook India, what is a large company, but using traditional business models mainly. And we can see their net income in this years in the comparison, and revenues, and to compare. And these are really three types of travel companies. Expedia is exclusively on an online travel company. TripAdvisor, the world's largest travel guidelines platform. Airbnb, they are the largest and given as an example with their online-based business model companies. The large hotel set Marriott, an example of a specific innovative business model of Marriott, also created reputable sources as a benchmark. And a third type, the third type is Thomas Cook India, the successor to the traditional tourist campaign. And you may see here two high-ranking Cook Russian travel companies, two under Cook, Mosland Travel, this is a Russian small company, and Biblioglobus, this is a Russian tourist company too. And you may see that the financial results of these three types of companies, the financial results show that entirely online-based platform, a traditional company such as Thomas Cook India, and much smaller traditional Russian travel companies with the traditional profile are negative ones. Marriott also did not fare better in the COVID situation. In his satellite business, this is a specific satellite business model for, and a model of customer loyalty. The revenues fell dramatically. This is the data from their annual reports, in fact. So this comparison, representative for the three types of companies, shows that those who have adopted the existing business innovative models have not performed better than those who have followed the traditional model. And the crisis caused by the external shock has had an equal negative impact on the tourism business, whether or not they have adopted a new web business models. We know the reasons about this bad performance: the closure, the lockdowns. So we can make conclusion that traditional and new and specific business models gives one and the same result in the COVID crisis. So where is the salvation? Maybe in better business models that emerged from the practice too. Localized low-cost business models. These are some models of better business models. Beyond the bursting business models, model market are conversation business models, low budget, community funded business model. These business models are social. And here is the example from the business model navigator created from St. Gallen in Switzerland University. Business model navigator. According to this great investigation, great research, they constructed a new business model in the condition of the COVID crisis. And they think that there are only two top business model patterns in the hotel industry: affiliation and customer loyalty. But we see that customer loyalty of Marriott don't give good results in the COVID crisis. In fact, finally. And now the main polar business models in COVID economy for sustainability. In my opinion, they are two. The state private, they have their duality business models. From one side, state with government power and budget and money issue, and private big tech, air state. And the state will be, and now is, and I think will be, a source of monetary and non-monetary subsidies for business. And from the other side, this what own the information, the powerful private digital companies. And from the other side, the human and intellectual humans capital from one side and artificial intelligence from the other side. These models will appear like beta models. Oh. About the tourism, yes, they can be adopted in the tourism sector because with more and more digitalization and robotics, the leisure time will growing, and tourism is an industry of leisure. So with the growing of free time, it's possible in different new business models to growing and tourist sector. To return about this duality business model, from one side state and from the other side oligopoly high tech, and human and intellectual human capitals, and from capital from the other side artificial intelligence, because the free human capital is a source of intellectual capital, and it created the value added in conditions in lockdowns, closures, and distancing. And it created the artificial intelligence, what is only the machine. So at one pole is the government with big tech, in agreement or in competition. They're dominated now. And on the second pole are self-created business models from human capital, intellectual capital, and artificial intelligence. And this is a model, a picture, rows of wings of new business models, two business models, because they cannot be only digital. The digitalization is not full and completely substitution of a physical world. In tourism too. About value creation with human and business ethics, new human and business ethics, sustainability, or green economy in this context, human and business relations in shared economy. This new related with the human capital and intellectual capital models are self-created and hybrid business models. So the changes what includes in the business models now, including this in the tourist sector, will be most likely require the implementation of self-created based on the club economic theory business models and so-called ambidextrous, working with equal with two hands business models, and business models what are based on the state and human intelligence and entrepreneurship. But both power models will be in the social trend. Something like the Roman god Janus, who had two sets of eyes. One pair focusing what is behind on traditional business models, traditional solutions, and the other on what lay ahead. So the management in these difficult times must backward to the physical world and traditional models and to new process and to new tools for surviving and success in the tourism for sustainability. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ninel, for your great and wonderful materials that we can get more information. Especially, I note one of the key points in your lectures regarding about proposal of the new models in condition of duality, and then about the human and intellectual, human's capital with artificial intelligence. What a wonderful information that we get. Yes, please join me, ladies and gentlemen. Big applause to Professor Ninel for her great lectures. And ladies and gentlemen, now let me introduce our second keynote speakers, Professor Mei-Ting Lu from Macquarie University. All right, Dr. Mei-Ting Lu is currently working as a senior lecturer in the Department of Accounting, Macquarie University, Australia. Her research interests include management of knowledge and intellectual capital and the measurement of intangibles. She is serving as an editorial member and reviewer of several international reputed journals. Dr. Meting Lu is the member of many international affiliations. She has successfully completed her administrative responsibilities. She has authored of many research articles and books related to management of knowledge and intellectual capital and the measurement of intangibles. Her research interests public sector accounting auditing, accountability and management, social and environmental reporting and auditing, management of knowledge and intellectual capital, and the measurement of intangibles. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Professor Meting Lu from Macquarie University. Dr. Meting Lu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, let me share my screen. Yeah, can you see my slide?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, okay, great.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Meting Lu from Macquarie University, and for Macquarie University, it's in Sydney, Australia. So yeah, you already see my background, which is a photo of our campus. And from this slide, you will see that this is the iconic building for our university. This is the library. Yeah, so it's a very beautiful, we have a very beautiful campus, and I do wish that in the future you will have an opportunity to visit our campus. Right. So this is the welcome from Sydney. And then I would like to say it's a great pleasure and honor for me to attend this workshop. And also I'm glad that I have the opportunity to share my research experience in this workshop. So if you look at the slides, the topic what I would like to discuss today is about the secondary data analysis. So my plan for today's presentation is first, I will give you some idea about what the secondary data analysis is. And then I will show you how to conduct the analysis or how to conduct the research by using the secondary data with an example. And that example is a recent paper which has been published in high quality journal, which is the Pacific Basin Finance Journal. So yeah, this is my plan for today. And now we look at, I want to give you some exposure on different research methods. So in general, in the field of business and economics, we generally classify the research methods into 4 groups. Okay, the first one is called archival study, or we call it secondary data analysis. And the second one is called experiments. And the third one is survey or interviews. And the fourth one is the field studies. And based on the data, for the archival study, we normally using the secondary data. So from the name secondary, so that means it's second-handed. Okay, that means that the data is already available outside. Okay, so what you need to know, what you need to do is just collect those existing data and then cleansing and modify those data to meet your research need. And for the primary data, usually will be used in those experiment surveys and field studies, because primary, so that means there is no data before. And once you do the research, you have to collect the data you want by yourself. Okay, so this is called primary data. So primary data example is the questionnaire you have, and you got the responses from the different individuals, and then you get those data, and these are the primary data because no one else will have that kind of data, and it's very private, and usually, yeah, it's has been it will be used just for one study. Okay, and in the contrast, for the secondary data, because it is publicly available, so you will see that the same data can be used in different research papers or studies. Okay, and what Nina has shown you for her research, just a few minutes ago, she said she is using the historic method. And in terms of the data, I think what she did is also collect the historical data from existing resources, like the newspaper, like the International Monetary Fund, or from the bureaucratic offices to get those GDP data, etc., right? All those existing data, if you are using those secondary data to analyze your research question, then we call it archival studies, right? And for the archive study, to analyze those data, you can use some statistical tools to find the differences or find the trend, right? And a popular way to analyze data is we're using this regression model as shown in the slide. So normally we will have an dependent variable, and on the right side of the equation, you will have those independent variables. And you can have one independent variable, or you can have more than one. And sometimes for other variables, we also need to add additional variables as the control variables, right? And you will have a series data for Y and a series data for those independent variables, and you run the regression and to find the coefficient. And if the coefficient is statistically significant, then we will say we can conclude that Y's change, Y is dependent on X, or there is a significant relation between X and Y. Right, so this is the common way when we do the secondary data, and we want to find whether there is any relation between two variables. And we just run the regression model to do it. All right, so research method, just bear in mind, the research method is just a tool for you to answer the research question. And so think about the question I have listed here. Right? We want to examine the consequence. For example, we have a research question and we want to examine the consequence of disclosure of social responsibility. And so this is the topic you want to do, and you want to see the consequence. So your research question can be achieved through different research methods. Okay, so just think about the way we can do. If we are using experiment method, then what you can do is you can find two different groups of companies, and one company has disclosed the CSR, and the other type of group, they do not disclose CSR reports. And then you compare the consequences. For example, the firm value, the customer's preference, or the attractive to the company's reputation, etc., etc. Right? So this would be the consequences, and you can design the experiment to select a group of companies and classify them into two, one disclosed, the other not disclosed, and then do the comparison. And you can, after analyze the consequences to see whether there is any differences in the consequence. Right? So this is the way you can use to answer a research question by looking at the experiment. And survey interviews, from the name, you can conduct surveys. That means you can design lots of questions regarding the consequences. You can ask the respondent. You can design lots of questions. Say that if the company disclosed the CSR, do you think it's helpful? Are you more willing to purchase the products which has been manufactured by a CSR-friendly company? And what's your view on company's disclosure of CSR? Those kind of questions, right? You can design a list of surveys and to see what's the feedback from the respondents, and then you can do some analytic. You can do some statistical analysis and find the result to see whether there would be some differences. There would be any difference in the reaction of the disclosure of CSR. And the interview as well, you can provide some questions to the interviewees and ask them their opinion on the disclosure of CSR. Right? And the case study, an example about case study to examine this question is that you can go to the company and observe what the company did. And if the company has disclosed the CSR, then you can go to the supermarket. If you want to see whether a company discloses CSR is more attractive to the customers, then if you are using the field study or case study, you can just go to the supermarket and to check if when the customers pick up things, whether they will have a preference to pick up those CSR-friendly products. And so you will see that we can use different methods to answer the same question. Right? So once you design your research method, you need to think which method would be more appropriate, okay? Because each method has its advantages and disadvantages. So yeah, it's a trade-off for you to pick up one, okay? So for a research paper, you don't really need to cover all those research methods. Just pick up one and do some appropriate analysis and then make the conclusion. Okay, so this is my suggestion when you look at the research question. Just pick up the research method which is more suitable, okay, for your research. And then now we look at, when we talk about the differences, and so in general, which one is the most popular or the best one out of these four? In general, the ideal methodology is about the experiment. Okay, so the experiment, because it gives you a direct comparison between two groups. So the ideal method is using the experiment. It's not the iCover study. It's not about the surveys of case studies. So I think interviews or case studies, the biggest shortage of these two methods is that they normally have a very small sample size. Right? So for case study, you can't spend 1 year just to observe those activities or behaviors of individuals. It's impossible, right? And the interviews, it's 100 people is already a very large sample in terms of interview. It means every 3 days you have to do an interview for a calendar year. So it's really impossible. So normally if you look at the research papers for interviews and case studies, for the case study, they only focus on 1 or 2 cases. And for interviews, the common sample size for interview is about 20 to 30. So this comes the problem is because you are looking at a very small sample size. So it's very likely that you cannot generalize your results to a larger population. And so the interviewees, the sample in the interview or the case study may be only applied to a typical group. It cannot be generalized to a general case. Right, so this is the shortcoming for interviews and case study. And for archival study, there would also be some problems when you're using the second data. Okay, and I will focus on the discussion of archival study later. Okay, so now we just look at experiments. And the meaning of experiment has been, you can look at this chart, which I get it from the internet, and it shows clearly what an experiment is. Okay, so you normally for a good experiment, you always have two groups, and these two groups are identical to each other. Okay, so exactly the same. This example is we want to see the percentage of seeds that sprout. Right? And we put 10 seeds into 2 different pots. And these 2 pots have the same size, put into the same soil length, and they put in the same place with same temperature. All right, so they are identical to each other. Then we slightly change, we put a condition for one group. So this pot, we have put waters to this pot, and another pot, nothing, we haven't done anything. So you will see that for these 2 identical pots, the difference is whether it has been watered or not, right? And the other conditions remain the same. And a few days later, we find that for the one has been watered, the percentage is 90%. 9 out of 10 has sprouted. But for the one without any watering, there is 0. So you will make it very clear, right? 2 things, two identical things, 2 exact same things. But because of one condition changes, we have totally 2 different results. Right? So this is the meaning of experiment. This is the experiment we have designed, and we see there is a significant differences. And this helps us to find out whether watering matters to the sprout. Right? And through this design, it's very clear. Right? And an experiment is widely used in medical science. Right? If you want to see a tablet whether a medicine works or not, you just find 2 identical groups and one treated with the new medicine and the other not, and then check whether the symptom has been removed or not. Right? So this is an example. But for management study, like the tourism or sustainability, it's extremely hard to find or to design the experiment, because there is lots of difficulties. The first difficulty is it's very hard to find 2 identical groups, right? Each person has their own personality and can be influenced by internal or external factors. Right? So you can't really control for the settings. You can't, even for twins, right? If they are identical in biological, but yeah, in terms of, they still have some differences in their behavior, thinking, etc., other aspects. So it's really hard to find the two identical groups. And the second difficulty is it's hard to get the desirable subjects, because we are looking at the management and we want to know their management decision. So it's better to find the subjects for those high-level managers like the CEO, CFO, or middle-level managers to participate in those experiments. But it's really hard because for those CXOs, they are extremely busy, right? They are businessmen and they won't spend the whole afternoon or whole evening just answer your question. So it's really hard to get them. And the third problem is, I think this is not only exist in the experiment, but also exist in the survey and case study. That is, human being. We are human beings, so we always suspect what the others want, and we want to know whether our behavior is correct or not. So it's really hard to, when you ask the questions or when you observe their behavior, the subject, they will consider that you are observing them, and they will think about what you want, and then they will react in the preference of, in terms of your preference, right? So this is called reactive measurement. And there could also be some ethical issues, right? If you want to ask someone, like the CSR, whether the company has done any population to the environment, the managers, they may just, they don't want to answer it if they do really populate the air or water, right? So for that, they have their concerns. They will wonder if they disclose that kind of information, whether it will be harmful to the reputation or harmful to their job security. Right? So this is another issue. The last one is experiments, still a small sample. So it is a question. It's questionable whether you can generalize the result to the reality, right? Because experiment, we have controlled settings, but in reality, there's lots of confounding factors there as well. So it's really hard to generalize the result. Right, so this is about the experiment. And go back to look at the secondary data. Secondary data, the advantage is that why for those 4 research methods, most of my studies are using the archival ones, using the secondary data. And why I have a preference over this method, because it saves me the time and the money. Okay, I don't need to go out to reach the people and ask them to answer the questionnaire or other things. And it also saves my time because I don't need to come out to collect data. I just go to the website and download the data I need, and then I can do a research paper. It's more convenient, especially in this pandemic period. In Sydney, we have lockdown about 7 or 8 months. And during this period, even now we have removed the lockdown restriction, but for the field study, it still needs special approval to do it. So some researchers which do behavioral topics, they are unable to reach to the subjects and conduct their research. So their research a little behind due to this uncontrollable, unexpected situation. But for archival study researchers, we don't have that kind of limitation. What we do is the data is already on the internet. As long as we got the internet, we can do the analysis, we can write the paper. And there is lots of databases around the world. So if you want to do some research in Australia, we have some research data in Australia. And if you want to do international data, you can go to DataStream and the WorldScope to download the data. And if you want to do some research in Japan, yes, you can ask some Japan fellow to download the data, and then you can do in Australia, right? Same for China. So yeah, it's very convenient for us to do the data analysis as long as the data is available. And it's also possible to mitigate the concerns for the other three methods. That is, other three methods, they only have a small sample. So generalization will always be a problem. But for archival study, we don't have that kind of issue, because what we do is we just download all the available data from a database. Like Australia, we can download all the listed firms' financial information from one data set. And so when you download that data, you do the analysis, it's already a whole population of all the listing firms. So it's not just a small sample. So you don't need to worry too much about your sample size or generalization. Right, and the result might be generalized around the world if you can download the international data and it includes all the companies worldwide. Then, yeah, then the results reflect the situation of the whole world. And another thing is, these are the real data, right? This is what happened in the world. So yeah, you can do some, it allows you to, it makes your research more related to the reality rather than in the lab. The results is only subject to the lab, right? And the last one, it's easy to justify the, it's verifiable, and then it's easy to justify or to ensure the credibility of the results, because they are the public available data set, and it enables replications. For the same database, it can be used by different researchers. And so to some extent, you can have some confidence on the result, because you may find similar results from other researchers by using this, which uses the same data set as you have. All right, so this is the pros of archival study. Right, save the money, save the time, and ensure the credibility. But the problem is that here, it's not really specific to your needs, okay? Because they are available data. So it's not it's not up to you to control the data. You don't have any control over the data. So you just use what you can have, right? So then you sometimes your research question, for example, you want to investigate or examine the person's judgment and decision making, right? But there is no available data for you to use, right? So this would, if you are doing some research in this area, then you can't really using the secondary data analysis, because you don't have any data specific to meet your needs about person's judgment, right? So based on that, then you have to use alternative research methods like the survey or interviews, because from survey and interview, it is more likely to observe the cognitive and the emotional processing of a person, of an individual, right? Then another issue is about the data quality. It could be biased in favor of the person who collected it, right? So the data quality because you are not the one who collect the data, so you don't really know whether that quality, the data quality is good or not, whether there is any mistakes or errors when entering the data to the database. Right? So this is an issue. And the second issue is it could be biased in favor of the person who collected it. An example is that for international data, like if I'm the person, I want to use, I have established a company which want to collect the data from Indonesia, but I don't know the official language. Apart from English, I don't know other language. So yeah, when I collect data, it may cause some issues, right? We have different understanding, or we have different terms to reflect the company's situation in the annual report. So yeah, then it's more likely the data we collected is the companies who has provided the English version, the annual report in English version. And then this could be biased because not all companies will have an English version annual report. And it's more likely that the larger companies are more likely to issue English annual report, or those multinational companies. Right? So if you want to use the data set you collected, then it may only focus on those large companies. Right? Then the research result you find, the findings you observed or you have reported in your study is only subject to those large firms. And for those small firms and the private firms has been ignored. So yeah, you have to think about the data quality. All right, and since the topic is about the sustainability, so I just want to give you some idea where you can get the sustainability scores or sustainability performance of the firms. Right. Because actually you don't, if you want to do some research on sustainability, you don't really need to collect, manually collect all the data. There is some existing rating agencies, they have do the ratings for CSR performance. So yeah, this is a shortcut. You can using the ratings they provided in your research. Okay, so the most popular ones are these three agencies. The first one is MSCI, or we normally call it KLD, and they are the largest data provider to the investment community. Okay, so you can they will issue the ratings for companies every year. And the Morningstar, they also provide some sustainability ratios scores, but they are fund level ESG ratings. And Thomson Reuters, I think this is the most popular or most widely used database. And then now they changed it. Used to call it Asset4, but now we call it ACON. EIKON, ACON. So if you search from website, you can find some information. Okay, Thomson Reuters, they have the most extensive international coverage. So not only just for those US firms, they also have the information for other countries. In the next slide, I have provided from the Thomson Reuters, the database. Here is the list of the Indonesia firms. So each firm will assign a score for their sustainability performance. And if you want to do the iCover study, you can using these sustainability ratios. And then you can, this could be the dependent variable or could be the independent variable. And then you can run some regression on it. Okay. And if you look at those, you can also refer to the papers they have published in those top journals, and they are using different types of CSR ratings. And yeah, you can also find some hints from those journals. All right. And now yes, when you do this secondary data analysis, you have to pay attention to those common methodological issues. Okay, the first one is the choice of data source. My suggestion, because there is lots of data available, even for GDP, right? You can get it from National's Bureau of Statistics, or you can get it from IMF or the World Bank, right? So there is lots of data sources you can use. Then you have to think about which one is more credible and more suitable. And my suggestion is, you always use the data source has been used by private literature, especially for those data which has been widely used in those top tier journals. Okay, so it's more acceptable in the field of research. And after you think about the choice of data source, and then the next thing is you have to do the evaluation of the data. You want to know whether the data quality is acceptable or not. So what you can do is you can, once you got the data, you can run a small sample and to see whether, you can check for a small sample and to see whether there is any obvious mistakes in the data collection procedure. For example, whether they have put an O instead of 0 in those quantitative measures. Right? Or you can check whether if like the total assets, if you find there is a negative amount for total assets, then it shows there will be some problem in the data collection. Because for total assets, it's impossible for a company to have negative total assets. Right? So these are very obvious mistakes in the data. And before you analyze the data, first of all, you need to check the quality. Right? And you also need to show the evidence in your paper when to indicate that the data quality is acceptable. So what you can do is write the sentence like this. The data source is widely used by other researchers or widely used by private literature. And for the new data source you have used for the first time, you can say that this data source, even though has not been used by other researchers, but it is widely accepted or widely used by industry or government, etc., etc. Right? So here is a tip you can use when you're writing a research paper to convince the audience that the data quality is acceptable. And another way you can evaluate the data is you can, in your summary statistics, that is when you report the mean, median, standard deviation, or those kind of statistics, you can compare those statistics with those published in other research papers. If two papers are using the same database, then yeah, the summary statistics always be similar. Okay, so what you can do is you can write a sentence like this. The summary statistics reported in table are consistent with those in papers published in 2001 or 2020, etc., etc. Right? So you can cite some research papers here. Okay, so this is about the data quality. And then the third issue when you do the secondary data analysis is that for the key concept, like the CSR, right? What we do is normally we will use more than one measure for a key concept in order to mitigate the measurement error. right? So for this, like the CSR reporting, right, we want to investigate something on CSR. And for CSR, actually, it is just a concept. We don't really know, we really hard to measure it in a number, right? So what the rating agency do is they assign a score and they look at different aspects of company's CSR performance and they do it. And even for CSR, if you look at, compare the same, if you look at one particular like IBM, one particular company like IBM, for these three different database, they may assign a different score for IBM, right? So it's if you just using one score from Thomson Reuters, then it may provide some biases if Thomson Reuters will, rate IBM in different aspects compared to the MSCI. Right, so it's always better to use more than one measure. So if you want to do the CSI and you have using one measure from Aiken, then in the further analysis, you can use the other two ratings to represent CSI and check the results and to see whether the results are consistent by using different measures. Okay, so this is, we normally call it robustness check. And the last one is you just need to think whether there is any bias in the data and the sampling. Okay, normally, because when we do the secondary data analysis, we don't really exclude a certain group of companies. So what we do is we always include all the samples within the database. Okay, we don't really exclude a certain group of companies, like the companies making loss or the companies which does not provide CSR reporting. So try to avoid the judgment or convenient sampling of the data. And you can also using the econometric tools to mitigate the bias in estimation. And a widely used method is called Heckman selection model. So if you are interested, you can Google search, and there's lots of papers using this method to mitigate the data bias. All right, so here is something I would like to share with you regarding on the secondary data analysis. So this is just an there is some basic concepts or fundamental knowledge about the secondary data analysis, and I'm not quite sure whether you have used this method in your research or not. If not, I hope through my presentation you will have a better idea and you will have one more option to do your research. All right, so for the second half of my presentation, I just illustrate how to conduct the secondary data by looking at this particular, okay, yeah, I will be quick, particular issue. So the topic is from here, this one, it's a political uncertainty and allocation of decision rights. Okay, so you will see political uncertainty is the independent variable and allocation of decision rights is the dependent variable. And how to, then you will see these are two concepts, right? We don't really know what it, if you want to measure it, it's really hard. So in our paper, we find a way to measure these two variables. The first one is about the allocation of decision rights. We are using how much cash the company allocate between it's about the cash resources to subsidiaries. So how to allocate the cash resources to subsidiaries, whether it is concentrated to the parent company or the subsidiaries have the right to use the cash. Okay, so this is about the it represents the allocation of decision rights. And second is for the political uncertainty. There is lots of ways to measure the political uncertainty. And in this paper, we look at the change in local officials. Okay? Because local officials, they normally have the political power and they will influence the local economic and industry policies, and which matters to the company's operation. And so we want to see whether the replacement of officers will make the business group to change their strategy to allocate the cash between the parent company and the subsidiaries. Right? And I have quickly, yesterday when I prepared slides, I just look at Google search. I just go to Google Scholar and I have searched the topic about political policy uncertainty and the tourism business. And you will see here, it's around 506,000 results for the research paper on this particular topic. Right? So you can simply replace this framework, this paper, replace the allocation rights with the tourism. And if you look at the first three papers, yeah, since we don't have enough time, but if you open these papers, they are using the archival data. They will tell you, those papers will tell you how to get the data and how to determine the policy uncertainty. And there is, they find that there is a significant relation between policy uncertainty and tourism. And the policy uncertainty sometimes is related to a country's monetary policy or exchange rate policy. So if there is any exchange rate changes, then the tourism will be affected based on that. Right? So based on these hypotheses, the researchers using some archival data and to conduct the research. So if you are interested, you can search by yourself and have a read on those papers. All right, so the idea is we have talked about the business group, and we want to look at the decision about the delegation of the decision-making rights. And there is two forms, decentralized or centralized. Centralized, that means all the decision is made by the parent company. And for the decentralized is that parent company has delegated the decision-making to different subsidiaries. And there is some reasons why you can go to using the theoretical framework to decide whether the company want to make the decision whether they want to centralize or decentralize. The framework we use is this is a trade-off between the information transfer cost and the agency cost. So in a decentralized one, the information cost will be lower, but for centralized, the information cost will be higher because those local information will be passed on to the parent company, and then parent company will make the decision, right, based on those information. So there would be some delay in the information transmission, and also there will be some distortion during the transmission process. And when we look at the agency cost, centralized, no agency cost because managers is the top managers and they work on behalf of the whole business group. But when you decentralize, it will increase the agency cost because there may be some interest misalignment between the parent company and the subsidiary company, right? So it's a trade-off to do that. And the policy uncertainty matters because when uncertainty, that means the environment uncertainty increased, then it's more necessary to convey the information. Information is quite important. And for the decentralized, the information transfer cost will increase. So the company may prefer to delegate decision rights to lower levels so that subsidiaries can make a quick action on the change in the environment. Right, so here is the story, and the model we use is the dependent variable is whether it's decentralized or decentralized. And the right side, we have the key independent variable. It's the political uncertainty. And it has been defined as 1 when there is a change of the local official. And we quickly look at the result. So if you look at here, we have done the different samples. And for the full sample, you will see all of those ones. We find a negative relation between centralized and the political uncertainty. So if there is a political uncertainty, it's less likely to be centralized. So this is consistent with our hypothesis. And we further look at economic consequences. We just do we look at topping Q and we look at investment efficiency, and we find the consistent result with our prediction. Right, so the sample data collect from the SISMA. This is the most popular database for Chinese stock market listed firms. And for the changes for local officials, we have hand collected, okay, from some existing materials and the internet. And we also do some robustness checks. We have replaced using an alternative measure of political uncertainty in other research papers, and then we find similar findings so that we are confident that our result is not biased because of the measurement. Right? And here is the conclusion. You have to summarize your findings in your paper. You have to summarize the findings, and you have to identify the contribution to the literature. So it's better to list 3 of the contributions. Okay. And yeah, due to the time limit, I have to stop here. And thank you for your attention.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Professor Mei Ting Lu from Econ University, for wonderful sharing regarding about the secondary data analysis, how we will work on the secondary data analysis in social science, and then about the details in pros and cons of using secondary data analysis in the research. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mei Ting Lu. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our third keynote speaker, Dr. Tina Miniawati Barusman Virgawenda SA MBA. She's from University of Bandar Lampung. Well, her BA, Bachelor degree in Accounting from University of Trisakti, Jakarta, and then Master of Business Administration, MBA, from University of Wollongong, New South Wales, Australia. And then in 2017, she got a doctoral degree in Economics, University of Trisakti, Jakarta. And then for work experiences, she has been involved in many companies, starting from companies for bank, example, Bank Danamon Indonesia, and then Korean Exchange Bank Danamon, and then also she right now is the general manager of PT Indohans Gemilang Jakarta. And she is also the director of PT Tinami Tour and Travel, the director of PT Tinami Kinaria Success, and many activities regarding about experiences. And then for the publication, recently in 2021, she has published a research paper entitled Antecedents of Tourist Behavioral Intention and the Effect of Travel Convenience as moderating variable on nature-based tourism. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Ibu Tina, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Sambal.
Yeah.
I think I have to unmute myself in here.
Suaranya kurang jelas, Bu. The sounds, probably the microphone.
Yes, how about now? It's better?
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you for inviting me to this conference, and good afternoon, everyone. This is the time now. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me share my PPT. It's about the tourism business and sustainability. I took the future of tourism business and its sustainability in Indonesia. As you can see here today. Now, this is just a little part of the wonderful Indonesia. As we know that the tourism itself is a part of the culture of the society related to the way they spend leisure and focus on their time. Tourism or recreation has become a necessity of the people. And the tourism sector is one of the important sectors for economic growth of Indonesia. In Asia, the tourism industry is growing fast with the pandemic of COVID-19. The number of foreign tourist arrivals had grown from approximately 5 million in 2000 to 60 million in 2019. The government set the objective of reaching 20 million arrivals by 2019, but despite a 6 million increase between 2014 and 2019, arrivals fell short of the objective by 4 million. It's according to our plan. As you can see at this diagram that China international source market, 16% of tourists come to Indonesia, by Singapore second with 13.2%, then Malaysia 10.6%, and Australia 9.7%. International tourism receipts so substantial, an average rate 8% per year since 2000. Indonesia is a global tourism destination. Indonesia is a vast archipelago and offers tourists a wide range of attraction activities. Tourism in Indonesia is predominant to focus on nature and culture. So we can see in this diagram, two categories representing 60% of nature and 35% of culture and 5% others. And two largest categories of nature-based tourism are ecotourism and marine tourism. Yes, Indonesia has nearly 3,000 tourism business in 2019. According to BTS, the Central Statistic Agency, it notes that there were 2,958 commercial tourism in Indonesia. Right, and here, the activities of tourist attraction is the most, and then followed by the water tourism, nature tourism, amusement and recreation parks, cultural tourism, and tourism areas. The total of those companies were managed by the private companies, and the rest are managed by local government and Either part of those tourist objects are managed by organized institutions and the central government. As we know that the tourism business was severely impacted by the global pandemic, COVID-19 that began in early 2020. Travel restrictions in early 2020. Numerous countries worldwide started introducing travel restrictions in early 2020, leading to an almost overnight stop in international travel. The decrease in international tourism led to negatively growth of tourism receipt in Indonesia, with the island of Bali being particularly hard hit. Were almost 100%, affecting the island's hospitality, food, and beverage and cultural sectors as the hardest. And the second negative growth of component of tourism. This causes components of tourism is also experiencing negative growth of tourism, and decrease in income in many countries, such as in Indonesia. According to WTO, it is estimated that 150 million to 100 million international tourism increased. And the third, the implementation of restriction on travel ban relates to access restrictions, the instruction to temporarily close almost all tourism destinations, and other requirements such as health certificates, PCR tests, official letters from agencies, and other documents concerning the SPB of the well, eliminates the number of travelers, either domestic or foreign tourists. The fourth, sectors that rely on clouds that were hardest hit. The sector that were hardest hit were places that rely on clouds. One of these is tourism and supporting businesses such as mass transportation, ticketing, hotels, and souvenirs. Based on this result that's conducted by the Ministry of Tourism and Economy, 0.97% of the type of business affected by COVID. So it's very hard to expand it. As you can see it is right, the mobility restrictions are hitting Indonesia tourism hard. According to Indonesia's IC 2020, the number of visitors before 2020 is quite high, but at the beginning of 2020, it dropped very sharp. It's followed by the travel service revenue also, and even expenditure per visitor also dropped very sharp. Tourism development on August 2020. Million visits also dropped, so 69.7%. And the number of foreign tourist visits in 1,000 visits also dropped 6%. And the number of foreign tourist visits by mode of transportation, by flight, by sea, or by land, also dropped. Infection. Then to foreign tourist arrival by national. Just based on the PBS, there are only 5 countries in Indonesia. From Timor-Leste is the first, in Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, is only Dutch. And the population situation, the population situation.
Excuse me, Dr. Tina, the sound is not clear. Probably the microphone problem with the microphone.
Yes. How about now? Yeah. How about now?
Okay, it's getting better.
Getting better. All right.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know what happened to my laptop. All right. I continue.
Yeah, good.
Yes, and the situation right now, not right now, it's recently about the new cases and death of the COVID-19 around the world by WHO region. You can see it in here, some regions getting the decrease about the number of the new cases and the death on October 18th in 2000. And then also followed by Indonesia, you know, this very sharp decrease of the number of the new cases and death. CDC
CDC US put Indonesia to level 1. It means the country amid better COVID-19 control. So, yes, every year tourism trends come and go. However, toward the end of the year 2021 become the set to be one of the tourism most significant years to date. We have the optimism to the recovery of the tourism business. Domestic travel restrictions have been progressively to the since May, but those on international visitors have been extended until October 14. The government has announced continues to support tourism, promote Indonesia Care, ID Care, initiative to ensure the safety of travelers of tourism establishment. The government also disbursed the government assistance for the tourism business. They provided hotel rooms to accommodate health workers. The budget's quite hard to give aid to the tourism sector from to Indonesia. And Indonesia is currently one of the countries with the highest vaccination achievement in the world. According to the Ministry of the Tourism and Creative Economy, the availability of the COVID-19 vaccine in early 2021 has been predicted to be capable in curbing the COVID infection, while also in stimulating the recovery of Indonesian tourism, especially domestic guests. And the tourism business and stakeholder support for tourism recovery. Yeah, the business and stakeholder support for tourism recovery, such as expanded vaccination programs for all tourism workers and tourists, and awareness with strict guidelines of health protocols and stimulating assistance. The next is country of origin of potential tourists who come to Indonesia have been considered by the WHO to be low risk with few COVID cases. Indonesia closed its border to foreign tourists about 18 months ago. Vaccinated tourists from 19 countries, country of origin potential tourists who come to Indonesia, including Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, New Zealand, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, China, India, Japan, South Korea, Liechtenstein, Italy, France, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, Poland, Hungary, and Norway have been considered by WHO to be low risk with a few positive COVID cases. Then they can now travel to Bali and Riau Islands only, not to other parts of Indonesia, only to Bali and Riau Islands. Travelers are subject to now only 3 days quarantine and have COVID-19 testing. The holiday island of Bali reopened to tourists from select countries. This step is what Indonesian authorities called as a baby step approach to resuming international travel. And the last, US and Australia have begun to allow its citizens to visit Indonesia. US and Australia have begun to allow its citizens. The Center of Disease Control and Prevention of the United States has lowered the level related to COVID-19 to Indonesia. Thanks to good COVID control, they say, CDC gave Indonesia level 1 or low for COVID transmission. Australia as well, after careful assessment, travel advice for Indonesia has been lowered to level 2 of 4. That's a good news. So that's come as our optimism to and this condition, the implementation of the community activity regulation to restrict the community to have activity. But we can now go to other areas in Indonesia with have negative PCR or negative test, including flight or by sea or the land, so and go to somewhere or some hotels. The hotel must prepare for the clean and sanitized rooms. So the hotel and other places, which is a restaurant, also have regulated the guests. Prepare about the breakfast schedule like this and here. As usually before a pandemic, you can enter the breakfast time. So 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, but now they have to regulate this. by the schedule. So Indonesia government about liberalization regulation. These have been implemented in popular destinations area for every weekend and holiday, such as in Ancol, Jakarta, or Bogor, Puncak, and Kota Beach, Bali. Yeah, the odd even rule is aimed to limiting the public so they don't form crowds and tourist attraction in destination. And for every destination, sometimes for the crowd, the government provide the care protect application that have to be sold on the place. And the restriction to enter malls and store, they have the limitation to people to enter. It's the recent condition. And recently, the PPK has been busy. It can be seen from the data from BBS that occupancy rate for star hotels increased to 6.64 in September 2021. But second wave of the pandemic in July, the occupancy rate for star hotel. But now, it's getting better with high occupancy rate. So, consumption for hotels and restaurants also getting better. Restaurant, accommodation, and hosting components food and beverage, but lower for the transportation and communication and supporting football. So, we can look for the Indonesian tourism business trend for 2000 next year and beyond. Domestic tourism is driving the recovery of several destinations, but in most cases only partially. Although international demand is still dropping. And domestic tourism is driving the recovery of several destinations, but in most cases, partially is not compensating the drop of the international demand, especially Bali, Bangka Belitung, Riau, and the most effective tourist destination. Although the number of domestic treatment in Indonesia far surpasses of the international visitors, domestic tourists spend on average around just half of what international visitors to Indonesia spend. Thus, the uptake in domestic tourism could not adequately compensate for the losses incurred from the decrease in international tourists. For the industry to bounce back, the pre-pandemic levels, the acceptance of international travel must be guaranteed. This is the first. The second trend, tourism business changes the way they operate. Tourism business changes the way they operate their travel for much more cognition, only able to travel as pretty regarding government regulation. As we are aware about this, had awareness and the long-lasting attitude effects of global pandemic, social distance travel, seeking transportation, and option for private transport to be more safe and avoid crowds. And the next trend, tourism business is required to be able to manage complicated travel arrangements and have regulation travelers. There too. Yes, tourism business is required to be able complicated travel arrangements, such as health regulation travel. There too, adaptation by implementing the health protocols, washing hands, wearing masks, using hand sanitizer, by encouraging GSSC, clean, health, safety, and environmental sustainability, as the certified tourist destination, as the Professor Nitika said, that the green card, right? And the next tourism business needs to strike a healthy balance between tourist expectation and the need to have some assurance-based progress to the next tourism. Yes, of course, tourism business needs to balance the condition of the kindness. They need to have some creation and cash forecasting. And the data from the PPLs also, that the occupancy of the hotel, land passenger, restaurant, and destination visitor index is just lower than the normal rate. Next, tourism business serves the emerging of niche market. This is very interesting because the tourism have to coordinate in managing tourists in a small group, as now getting a trend for the tourist. Family or friends, reunion travel with the flexible itinerary travels, and the components of the itinerary may resemble a package, but the itinerary is custom built for the traveler. Tourism business creates itineraries to the groups who already know and trust each other and regularly interact. And the next trend, tourists increasingly using digital technology to search, plan, and book travel. The process of digitalization is applied to tourism. Is already underway to provide tourism operators to direct access to international market and customer. In Indonesia, 80% of tourists use digital media to search destination and share their experiences. On the most visible changes of the development of online travel agents and digital platforms that intermediate between customer and provide like hotels, restaurants, and taxis. Ongoing digitalization of many other sectors such as logistics, transport, culture, retail, or finance is also affecting the tourism sector, as such as cashless payments. And the next, nature-based destination and unique experience are the most popular choice to travel. So we have to prepare about this because tourists must aware a cognition about the condition of the pandemic. The nature-based destination and unique experience is the most popular. Traveling in nature can be appealing way to people who enjoy nature, unique experience, simply to save money and more safe and avoid from crowds in travel. Right. However, Indonesian tourism business are more concerned about over-tourism, climate change, polluted beach and waterways. This, according to World Bank, OECD say like that, and also it is experienced by many countries, I think, as can be seen in here. How can we enjoy this beach? Based on the data from the BPS also and the World Bank, that the most of tourism industry has focused on two major destinations for marine and tourism. Bali and Lombok together account for approximately 50% of foreign arrivals. The concentration of tourism in a few locations has created a problem of overcrowding, like this, overcrowding so many people on this one spot or one destination, especially in the popular tourism destination, which have been found unprepared to manage such as flows of people. Over tourism increases in water consumption, air pollution, litter and waste in tourism destination. It is causing, of course, major water shortage, for example, in Bali, and almost the whole Indonesia. Reports suggest that the rivers in the region are drying up and there will be a drought-like situation that will disrupt the life in there. Right, in like this also, that's the over-tourism. Even in the top of the mountain, how can we enjoy this? Yeah, and the next about the climate change, and I think that Indonesia only happened that almost tourism destination greatly affected by natural conditions and its change. The impact of the accelerating climate change will at least increase the average daily temperature of the world, rise in the sea level, drastically decrease genealogical diversity, flora and fauna, as we can see before and after climate change or the higher of temperature. A similar thing happening massively in Indonesia, reducing or even eliminating tourist attraction and experience. Like this, the pollution of the beaches and the waterways affected the impact of those. That's the pollution, especially for the plastic waste and marine litter that have reduced the attractiveness of the number of the key touristic destinations in this country. Coastal environment is one reason international tourists don't want to visit beach anymore. And the existence of the garbage around the beach reduces the charm of some beaches in Indonesia. For example, in Kuta Bali and Pangandaran, West Java, the international tourists will not return to that place because of the lack of clean lines and the tourist sites and the lack of the facilities and infrastructure. So
yes, I think we have to rebuild international tourist preference by precautions, be creative and innovative, specialization, adaptation, and flexibility. Although nobody knows exactly what will happen and there's no consensus about when the tourism business will recover from the COVID pandemic, tourism have to improve their service standards and regain trust from both domestic and foreign tourists. About the precautions, in the future, we may see destination popularity being dictated by how well the country or region has controlled the coronavirus. The precautions that are in place and how the initial outbreak was handled will reassure tourists that will be safe while in the particular location or destination in Indonesia. Restoration of safe domestic and international mobility, coordination of health standard and protocols. For example, we have to check the PCR, we have to check about our healthy by negative PCR or antigen result. We need to get creative by designing social distance travel, where the traveler is likely don't contact with others. And be creative and innovative regardless of the business. One thing that will not change, locally driven and unique experience will continue to be the forefront of appealing to tourists. Tourism business in Indonesia must devise creative and innovative ways to improve competitiveness and for destination and differentiate themselves. This being done by creating touristic routes based on different natural resources, for example, by dividing the destination into different routes, is focusing on different attractions specific to that region's culture, such as ecology and the museums, adaptation and implementing the health protocols, of course. And according to UNWTO, that last year, millennials outnumbers baby boomers. Because of this, the next big wave of tourists is expected to be from millennial generations. So we have to adapt and be flexible with this. They become the flexible, independent travels and should apply those travelers who have flexibility in their itinerary, some degree of freedom in where they choose the travel within the destination region. They have considerable choice in the towns and cities they will visit the destination region. Even after the vacation has been booked, they can cancel anytime or change the schedule anytime. That's the flexibility. And of course, we need to have a collaboration among countries. Rules and regulations related to the health protocols differ widely across countries. The design of quarantine rules have not been coordinated across countries. Now in Indonesia, if you come to Indonesia, the quarantine is limited in 3 days, but other countries could be longer or even faster, or no need to have a quarantine. So the coordination from the international, the health about the health standard and protocol have to be revitalized. Collaboration also allows new linkages across different business to emerge. And about the digitalization, the drive tourism recovery, investment in this digitalization will be critical. Digital natives such as online travel arrangement, aggregator, and while addressing safety concerns and contribute to environment. Yeah. If tourism develops strategically, has the potential to contribute to the protection of environment also and convention. For instance, by raising awareness of environmental values, it can serve as a tool for protection. And campaign and promotion. Campaign and promoting to your destination are very important, especially during the time when every tourist is critical. So tourists are aware to the various opportunities. For example, by using stamps to promote the commitment to safety, authenticity, and hygiene. Such stamps can communicate tourism business to take those things seriously. Guest and employee trust, safety, and sense of destination commitment are imperative for succeeding in the future. Whether or not the world reaches a second wave of COVID, maybe third, or we don't know when will be end of this pandemic. The effective communication is critical in vocalizing what hotel, restaurants, and destination is doing to go above and beyond regarding safety and the overall health of the tourists. And one thing that really important also user fees. User fees should be introduced and be set high enough to pay for the cost of best infrastructures maintenance and compensation. Some broken beaches and other places or destinations because you can go there freely. So the number of visitors have the sensitive type should be limited. Some protected areas in Indonesia already open with entrance fee, such as Munchen, Gede, Pangrango, Bromo, and other destinations. Even to Raja Ampat, you have to pay. You have to pay fees, and maybe a different tariff for the foreigner and the local tourists. Look at here, how the international tourists enjoy Yogyakarta by driving beca. How we can invite them again to come to Indonesia. Here also, each day where they swimming, there is the religious ceremony in Bali. This is very harmonious. So to achieve sustainable tourism business for visitors itself, I think we have to educate tourists about how respect nature, respect culture, and respect host community. And from the economy, we need to resilience. Yes, because the situation is not unpredictable. I think unpredictable, and investment also innovation. And for the community, we have to provide quality job for them because we built the tourism attraction and there, connecting with the community and having sustainability supply chains, including supporting local and regional suppliers. Next, restoring nature. It is important for the environment, for the sustainability tourism business, reducing carbon use and minimizing and ultimately eliminating waste. How can we do that? And thus is ethics, culture, and social responsibility. Understanding and commit to attitude of tolerance because Indonesia is very, very diverse country in the harmony and respect for the diversity. Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tina, for very wonderful presentation lecture. And then now we will have questions. I'll read all the questions that coming through the Zoom chatting room or through the committee. Okay, we'll start with questions to Professor Ninel. Let me, yeah, okay. To Professor Ninel, there are some questions. Professor Ninel?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, yeah. What is the relationship between external shock with tourism development? It is the question from Dr. Khairuddin. And then the second question, Dr. Ninel, how to measure tourism and sustainability with pandemic COVID-19 related to the external shock? It is the question from Dr. Haninun. And then the last questions, in many countries now open for tourism with health protocol for protection by COVID-19 pandemic. The questions, it is from Dr. Wulan. What strategic policy to anticipate if the pandemic booming again related to sustainability tourism? Or probably you can explore with examples in Bulgaria. Okay, it is for Professor Ninel. And then for Dr. Lu, let me check. Oh, there are some questions already answered by Dr. Lu, yeah. But there are still questions from the committee, yeah. Let me check.
Okay.
Yeah, question number 1.
This is about external shock.
Yeah.
This is a shock what is not endogenous from economic factors, not economic factor, not from clean economy, but this is from social or it's possible to be ethical factors too. If you read this explanation is given in the paper, I sent the link. About the second question, what was the second question?
The second question regarding about how to measure the tourism and sustainability in one times with pandemic COVID-19 related to the external shock in the society.
Yes, I can give only the explanation from the policy of European Union.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know, do you inform that European Union leading in so-called sustainability, and under sustainability in European Union is understand green. There is 700 pages technical report about European green taxonomy. What have to be obligatory, compulsory from large companies, not only in European Union, including companies in the sector of tourism, different sectors, cruises, hotels, etc., etc. And on these requirements given in taxonomy, green taxonomy, it's necessary to be prepared ESG report. And then this ESG report have to be screened. But this screening is not yet prepared from European authorities. So in European Union will be very strong measure for the sustainability, including the tourist companies. And these companies what are outside from European Union, what will be operated in European Union countries. So the measure is very difficult, not prepared at all to this moment. And the tourist companies, the sustainability of these tourist companies will be measured on these requirements. The main key point in this measurement are the climate changes. And the main part of ESG report is the carbon report for the companies. This is the main problem. And there is a goal in 2050, European economy at all companies, tourism too, to be zero carbon economy and zero carbon companies. This not depends to small and medium and micro enterprises to this moment because they have no model for environmental and ESG reports. But the accountants work in this line, and to this moment, the small and medium enterprise and micro enterprise, they can participate if they cover the taxonomy requirements in the projects of large companies. And the measurement will be very heavy, equal for all, and with key point on the problems with the climate changes. On the first place, the problems with carbon dioxide issues. This is my answer.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Professor Ninel. Now we move to Dr. Lu regarding about the questions. Actually, you have responded, but probably you want to make a comment for overall comment regarding about the data, primary, secondary, regarding about publication in high reputation journals and so on and so forth. Yes, please, Dr. Lu. The microphone, please.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, so I just want to provide some suggestions in terms of the publication. So I think every journal has their own preference on the type of research method. So what I would suggest you, first of all, you can do some survey, do some research on the journal's style, and also think about whether your research topic fits to that journal or not. Okay, and based on that, then you can decide your research method, whether you want to use the primary data or secondary data. And in my experience, because I'm a researcher in accounting and finance, and if you look at the top tier journals, most of the journals, they are using the archival data. Okay, and yeah, so it really depends on your targeted journal and your research question to determine whether you want to use the primary data or secondary data. And another thing I want to emphasize is about the contribution. Yes, the reviewers may think that primary data, because it's unique, so normally you can always claim it as a contribution. But for those high quality journals, the reviewers, they are not only look at the innovation in terms of data or in terms of the sample. What they care most is your contribution to the literature. Okay, in general speaking, is about whether you have provide more insights to a certain topic. Right, so like in China, what we always emphasize on is that when we're using the Chinese study using the archival data, the one contribution we can claim for using the Chinese data is that in China, we have lots of state-owned companies, right? So it's easy to identify that this is not happened in those developed countries like US or Australia. So this will distinguish the Chinese data with other countries' data. And for Indonesia, as far as I know, family firm is a denominant form of the companies. Right, so this is very unique in Indonesia. So I think when you write your contribution, you can say that we provide some evidence for those family firms, which has not been explored in other studies. Right, so these are some strategies you can use to write the paper. So as long as your contribution is enough, then it's much easier for you to publish in those good journals. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I think the key point is the contribution of our paper, right? Yes, so as far as our contribution is regarded wonderful or expected with the scope of the journal, I think it is also potential for us to propose our analysis on the secondary data.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lu. Now we move to Dr. Tina. Actually, there are many questions from the participant. Probably they are students of Dr. Tina and then also alumni of our university. But I'm sorry for the participant. I just select some questions because we almost have Maghrib here in Indonesia. So I just select 3. Yeah. I'm sorry if your questions are not selected. Question number 1 from Ibu Tira Warganegara. Yeah. Demand for a visit increases with environmental quality and uniqueness, but more visitors mean more infrastructure is required, and risks to the quality of the protected area are higher. What should tourism management do to overcome this kind of situation? It is from Ibu Tira, and then the second one from Ibu Dinda Arabella. How Indonesia ensuring growth in tourism regarding about the sustainability? And then from Ibu Luke, tourism business in Indonesia is trying to rebuild international tourism. What is the indirect economic impact of international tourists to Indonesia? So these three questions. Please, Dr. Tina.
Well, thank you, Mr. Santo, and thank you for these questions. For the first question, eventually overuse leads to degradation, which lowers demand. Different tools can help regulate the volume of tourists and exploit their potential without blighting the future of the protected area. As I mentioned, that we can charge or we can use the user fees to the visitors or the tourists. For example, visitor fees, such as for access and for additional activities. If the tourists want to diving, trekking, or hiking, can generate benefits that help cover the initial setup cost. To organize facilities for tourists and operating costs, of course, and can fund environmental protection. And then we can also implement the congestion fees that can complement revenues to protect the area. In some places, private actors could run business related to food, lodging, transport, guiding, or other activities. And maybe we can make a specific regulation that can be used to limit visitors to carrying capacity, such as a maximum number of visitors at any given moment. For example, when you want to hike on the mountain, we have a specific regulation to do that. And a regulatory framework to control the use of protected area. We can take in the different forms. For example, rules that set to limit use and establish a minimum level of protections. That's for the first question. And about how Indonesia ensuring growth in the tourism is sustainable. Well, Indonesia tourism and environment are deeply interconnected. Indonesia committed to achieving the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, or SDG, which include eradicating poverty, improving health and education, achieving gender equality, and of course, protect environmental assets. The development of tourism can directly contribute to all of the SDGs, and especially decent work and economic growth. And good policy planning is also important to preserve environmental assets. To raise the sustainability of the sector, medium-term planning should gradually be focused on increasing yield rather than number of tourists. So we, even though we need tourists, but we have to range about the number of tourists that come to Indonesia. For example, when we're building a new airport that will bring hundreds of thousands of additional tourists, the capacity of waste and water treatment should be also be raised like that. And for the third question, tourism business in Indonesia are trying to rebuild international tourists. What is the indirect economic impact of international tourists to Indonesia? I think it is about the monetary flows within and between countries of intermediaries and final goods and services for economics and industrial activities. The direct economic impact or value is computed from the sales of goods and services to tourists, for example, spending in a restaurant, while the indirect impact or contribution comes from inputs, both domestic and imported, that required for those sales, for example, food purchased by restaurants. On average, for Indonesia, around half of tourism value added comes directly from core industries that sell direct to the tourists. The sectors produce mostly services. And the importance of international tourism trade is estimated to be relatively low for Indonesia, hoping that the surge of international tourists will likely show a larger contribution. This means that future growth in tourism can benefit many parts of the economy of Indonesia. That's it, Mr. Santo.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Tina, for responding the question from the participants. Okay, thank you again, Professor Ninel, Professor Lu, Professor Tina, for providing us, sharing information, great lectures regarding about the topic in our international webinar and workshop. Hopefully that we will meet again in another webinar and workshop hosted by our university. Okay, now the forum will be sent to Yola as the master ceremony. Yes, please, Yola.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Santo. So we have already at the end of today's session, and I would like to remind to all the honorable participants to send your attendance on the link given on the chat box. And also, please turn on your camera because we will have a photo session together. That will be taken with Pak Iwan. Pak Iwan?
Yes, Pak Iwan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Yola.
Comedy.
I will take some picture, please. Be ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't forget to provide your best smile.
First slide.
Your palm,
Okay.
camera.
Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. First slide. Okay. And the second slide. Please turn on your camera. Okay, thank you. Third slide. Okay, and the last. Okay, thank you.
Okay, already done, Pak Iwan. So I would like to say thank you once again for all the keynote speakers today, for the amazing material, and then hopefully all of us can take the knowledge as many as possible. And on behalf of the committee, I would like to extend our appreciation to each and every one of you for attending today's seminar and workshop. And I will see you on the 5th International Seminar and Workshop. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very
Matthew.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Professor
Tina,
Director of
Thank you, Butina.
Thank you,
Everybody.
Professor Andala.
Thank you, Mr.
Santo.
Santo. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Have to pray as well first.
Oh ya Allah, belum asar Bu.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.